You see that shelf over there? The one holding the vintage chisels?
The one that's slightly, and I mean microscopically, out of level? Yeah, I see it.
It's driving me crazy. But here's the thing nobody tells you. The moment you start making your own gear, you develop this curse. You can't just go to a big box store and buy a plastic bracket anymore. Your brain won't let you. You look at a $20 particle board nightstand and think, I could build that for $80 in materials and 40 hours of labor.
And that's why your wife rolls her eyes when you say you're heading to the shop to save money. We both know the math doesn't check out, Tiger. You're the only person I know who spends $300 on a Japanese pull saw to avoid buying a $10 spice rack.
Hey now, that spice rack will outlast the house. But really, today, I wanted to talk about a philosophy that goes beyond just saving a buck. It's the idea that the best things in life, especially in the shop, are the things you actually can't buy.
Okay, I'll bite, because usually if I want something, I just pull out my phone and it shows up at my door in 2 days. What are we talking about? Bespoke artisanal toothpicks?
Not quite. I'm talking about the stuff that bridges the gap between the frugal crowd and the maker crowd. I saw this thread online recently where people were bragging about making their own oat milk and homemade window cleaner, and it got me thinking about the shop.
Wait, hold on. Are you making your own window cleaner now? Is that what that blue sludge in the mason jar is? I thought that was some kind of high-end wood dye.
Let's just say I paid tuition on that lesson. And no, Windex does not make a good walnut stain. My shop windows still have a slightly blue tint to them. Ask me how I know. But no, the real magic is when you realize that off the shelf is usually shorthand for compromised. When you buy a workbench, you're buying something built for the average height of a human in 1954. When you build your own, you're tailoring it to your reach, your height, your specific brand of back pain.
So it's about the bespoke factor. But for the average person listening, the one who maybe doesn't have a 5-horsepower table saw, is it actually worth making things like cleaning supplies or, I don't know, toothpaste? The internet seems to think we should all be grinding our own flour.
There's a line, right? I'm not going to start mining my own iron ore to forge a hammer. But there's a middle ground. What the old timers know, but don't share, is that a lot of the industrial solutions we buy are just cheap fillers in a fancy bottle. Take furniture polish. You go to the store, buy a spray can that smells like a synthetic lemon had a midlife crisis.
I know that smell. It's the "my house is clean, but I have a headache" scent.
Exactly. Or you take some beeswax, a little linseed oil, maybe a drop of real essential oil. You melt it down. It costs pennies. It protects the wood better. And it feels like you're actually caring for the piece, not just coating it in silicone.
Okay, I get the soul aspect of it, but let's talk about the practical side. I saw a post that mentioned making your own powdered sugar just by blending regular sugar. That feels like a life hack. Is there a shop version of that? The why didn't I think of that moment?
Oh, absolutely. The biggest one for me, marking gauges. You can spend $100 on a fancy brass and ebony marking gauge. Or you can take a scrap of white oak, a single drywall screw, and a thumb bolt. What they don't put in the manual is that the one you make yourself, the one that fits your hand perfectly, will be the tool you reach for every single time. Don't ask me how I figured this out, but the pretty tools usually stay on the wall. The ugly homemade ones do the work.
It's the velveteen rabbit of tools. They become real when the finish wears off and they're covered in your sweat. But what about the stuff that's actually better when it's homemade? Like the food examples. Homemade pasta is objectively better than the dry stuff in the blue box. Is there a shop equivalent where the homemade version is actually higher performance?
Jigs, hands down.
Jigs? Like for a dance?
No, though I have been known to do a little jig when a joint fits perfectly. A jig is just a guide, a frame that holds your tool or your workpiece so you can make the same cut 100 times with 0 errors. Nobody warns you about this, but if you buy a universal jig from a catalog, it's going to be universally mediocre. It'll have play in the sliders, the plastic will flex.
So you're saying the store-bought version is the one size fits none of the tool world.
Precisely. But when you build a cross-cut sled for your specific table saw out of high-quality plywood you picked yourself, and you calibrate it to 1/1000th of an inch using the 5-cut method, man, there is no feeling like it. You are achieving a level of precision that a factory in a different country just can't provide for $50.
I want to push back a bit on the frugality aspect. You mentioned early on that making it yourself often ends up costing more. If I'm making my own laundry detergent or my own shop soap, am I really saving money? Or am I just buying a very expensive hobby?
It's a fair point. If you value your time at $50 an hour, then making your own soap is a financial disaster. But here's what I wish someone had told me early on. The cost isn't just the materials, it's the autonomy. Think about the supply chain issues we've had lately. I couldn't get my favorite wood finish for 6 months.
The Great Polyurethane Famine of 2021. I remember the dark times.
It was brutal. But guess what? I know how to mix a shellac finish from flakes and alcohol. I know how to cook up a wax finish. I wasn't dependent on a pallet coming from a warehouse across the ocean. There's a quiet, dry satisfaction in knowing that even if the stores close tomorrow, I could still keep creating.
Okay, that's actually a really powerful point. It's not just about the stuff, it's about the skill set. If you know how the thing is made, you aren't a consumer anymore. You're a producer.
Exactly. It's like the person in that Reddit thread asking about making baby formula. Now, please don't make your own baby formula. That's a level of DIY that involves way too much biology for my comfort.
Stick to the furniture, Tiger. Let's keep the kids alive.
Right? But the spirit of the question is right. We've become so detached from the how of our lives. We buy all-purpose cleaner because we forgot that vinegar and water does 90% of the job. We buy custom furniture because we forgot we have hands.
You know, I was looking at your workbench earlier. You have that little wooden mallet. It's beat up, it's got a crack in the handle that's been glued back together. You could buy a fancy rubber mallet for like $5. Why keep that one?
That mallet, it's made from a piece of locust wood from a tree that fell in my grandfather's yard. I turned the handle on a lathe that I just finished restoring. The part they leave out of the YouTube tutorials is the emotional weight of a homemade object. Every time I hit a chisel with that mallet, I'm not just driving steel into wood. I'm connected to that tree, to my grandfather, and to the version of myself that was still learning how to use a lathe.
So the thing you can't buy isn't just the physical object. It's the history?
It's the story. You can't buy a story at IKEA. You can buy a shelf called Kallax, and your story will be, I spent 3 hours arguing with my partner about an Allen wrench.
Too real. I think I still have a scar on my thumb from a Kallax incident.
But when you make it, the story is, I found this wood in a barn. I messed up the first 3 joints. I almost gave up. But then I figured it out. That frustration makes the final product, I don't know, it makes it vibrate with a certain energy.
Okay, let's get practical for a second for the listeners. If someone is sitting there thinking, I want to start making things I usually buy, where do they start without, burning their house down or spending $10,000 on a forge?
Start with the consumables. That's the easiest win.
Consumables? Like shop snacks? Because I'm very good at making those.
Shop snacks are vital, but I mean stuff you use up. Make your own Odie's oil style finish, beeswax and citrus solvent. Make your own shop rags out of old t-shirts. If you're into metalworking, make your own layout fluid. It's just rubbing alcohol in the ink from a permanent marker.
Wait, really? That's all layout fluid is? I've been paying $15 a bottle for that blue stuff.
Learned that one the hard way, didn't you? Most of the specialty liquids in a shop are just common chemicals with a fancy label and a 400% markup. Once you start realizing that, the frugal switch in your brain flips, and you start seeing everything as a potential DIY project.
What about the failed DIYs? Because we always talk about the successes. Give me a Tiger disaster story. What's something you tried to make because you couldn't buy it and it went horribly wrong?
Oh man. Early on, I decided I was too cheap to buy a real wood steamer for bending chair parts. I thought, I have a tea kettle and some PVC pipe. How hard can it be?
Oh no, I see where this is going.
It turns out PVC pipe has a very specific glass transition temperature, which is basically the point where it stops being a pipe and starts being a wet noodle. I was halfway through steaming a beautiful piece of cherry, the pressure built up, the PVC softened, and the whole thing just wilted. It looked like a giant, sad piece of rigatoni, and then the pressure blew the cap off and shot boiling water all over my boots.
Please tell me there's video of this.
No, but my neighbors heard words that haven't been invented yet. The lesson there? Sometimes, the thing you can't buy is the engineering that goes into a professional tool. I should have bought, or properly built, a metal steam box. I tried to shortcut the shortcut.
That's the tuition you keep talking about.
Exactly. But even that failure taught me more about the properties of plastics and thermodynamics than any book ever could. I'm a better maker because I failed at being a plumber.
You know, we've talked about tools and chemicals and furniture, but what about the things that aren't useful in the traditional sense, like art or just things that make the shop feel like home?
That's actually the most important category. The shop totems. I have a little copper owl I hammered out of a piece of scrap pipe. It serves zero purpose. It doesn't hold a screw. It doesn't measure anything. But it sits on top of my bandsaw and reminds me that I'm here to play, not just to produce.
I think people forget that. We're so obsessed with productivity and hacks and saving money that we forget the joy of just making a mess.
Here's the thing. Nobody tells you. Your shop shouldn't be a factory. It should be a laboratory. If you go in there thinking, I need to save $200 by building this cabinet, you're going to be stressed out. But if you go in thinking, I'm going to make a cabinet that is exactly 43 3/8 inches tall, because that's the only way it fits under my weird sloped ceiling, then you're solving a puzzle. That's where the satisfaction lives.
It's the unbuyable solution.
Exactly. The world is built for averages. Averages are great for corporations. They're terrible for individuals. When you make your own, you're reclaiming your non-average self.
I think that's a perfect place to wrap it up. Making things isn't just about the end product. It's about the fact that you can.
And the fact that you'll never have to follow an IKEA instruction manual again. That's the real freedom.
Amen to that. Next week, are we going to talk about how you tried to forge your own wedding ring out of a rusty lawnmower blade?
Let's just say my wife is a very patient woman, and that lesson, well, that's a story for another time.
Can't wait. Thanks for listening to The Tiger Den, everyone. Now go out there and make something that doesn't exist yet.
And if it blows up, just call it research.